Hello and welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Sian and this is what I read in June. There were 5 books, 2 of them were pretty large books, so I'm quite chuffed with that. One of them I had started reading in February, so it did take me quite a while to get through it. The first book I read this month is The Librarian of Auschwitz, and this is by Antonio Iturbe, and it's based on the true story of Dieter Kraus. Now, Dieter was a 14-year-old girl who took on the not small task of being the librarian. She was in a special block, and the block's kind of purpose was to give the outside world this impression that families were thriving within Auschwitz and that it wasn't all awful, which obviously it was. So they ran a secret school there, which could only happen when there were obviously no guards around. I read this having read The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which was an incredibly powerful book. Now, that's not to say this isn't a powerful book, but it's just a bit diluted from that, and I'm guessing that's because it's from a girl's point of view, as in she wouldn't have seen that much of the horror. Obviously she still saw a hideous amount of things and she obviously had a really tough time, but it's not quite as powerful in the same way as the Tattooist book. But I really enjoyed this book, and it was so interesting to see this viewpoint of the concentration camps and what was going on at the time. And it is a powerful book. It's one that definitely had an impact on me as I read it, because you just can't comprehend how life was like that. It genuinely is something we can't imagine. So that was the first book I read this month. Second book I read this month is She Lies in Wait by Githa Lodge, and this is a debut novel. It's a thriller and it is gripping. It's a fantastic book. It has so many twists and turns. It's set in 1986, I think, when 6 friends go camping in the wood, but one of them doesn't come out of the wood. 30 years later, a body is uncovered, and DCI Sheens knows that it is the body of Aurora Jackson, the missing teenager. And this book has so many twists and turns. It's a real thriller. There was a slight part of it that reminded me of Into the Woods by Harlan Coben, but just like so small that it's obviously not the same. And I really enjoyed this book. You're obviously delving into the lives of those teenagers, but 30 years on, so you're seeing who they've grown up to be. They're hiding things, they're not being honest. It is thrilling. I did guess 1 or 2 things, but I didn't guess the killer, which is always good. I really enjoyed this book, and I'm looking forward to any books that come after it. Now, the third book I read I actually started in February, and that was Becoming by Michelle Obama. This was the Bookish Mamas Book Club read for May-June. It kind of spanned because it is a big book and there's so much in this book, and it's an incredible read. I felt really humbled by reading Michelle Obama's story and finding out kind of the fact that she came from a relatively poor family in a sort of rundownish area of Chicago. It's her story of determination and grit, and obviously of love, falling in love with Barack Obama and everything that came with that, because it's quite clear from this book that he had not anticipated running for president when they first met. It's not something I don't think that had crossed his mind. So it's something that happened whilst Michelle Obama was on the scene, and how they brought up their children in the White House under that glare of the media and scrutiny, and I can't even begin to comprehend how huge that media spotlight and how overwhelming living your life in that spotlight must be. This is a brilliant book. I love Michelle Obama so much more than I did before. I just have so much respect for her. I think she's a fantastic, incredible, strong woman. The fourth book I read this month, and my absolute favourite this month, is Beartown by Fredrik Backman. If you've been watching these videos a while, you will know I love Fredrik Backman's books. They're usually about really awkward characters. A Man Called Ove is about kind of a crotchety, curmudgeon-y man who is very stuck in his ways. He's very awkward. Britt Marie is very awkward. This book is totally different. It's almost young adult fiction, It's set in Beartown, which is a place which is almost always absolutely freezing, full of snow, ice, bears, you name it. And this is a hockey town. It has always been a hockey town. It has been a more successful hockey town at times and not as successful hockey town at times. Just a quick point though, you don't need to know anything about ice hockey or like hockey to understand and love this book. This book is very, very different to Fredrik Backman's previous books, and it follows the lives of a group of teenagers, many of whom are on the ice hockey team, and a young girl called Maya whose dad is the coach of the team, and you see all the politics surrounding it. The first third of this book took a bit to get going. It took me quite a long time to read the first third, and then from that first third I read the second 2/3 in about 24 hours because I could not put the book down. It covers some incredibly sensitive issues. There is a rape within the book, and you see how the community reacts to that and how they instantly blame the girl. It is a very poignant book. It's a very powerful book. It is a book I could not put down for the second 2/3, and I would recommend this to everyone. I found out as I finished it that the sequel is out now, and I cannot wait to read it. I've already ordered it, so hopefully we'll be reading that maybe in a few days. I don't know, as soon as it arrives I think I'll read it. Fredrik Backman's books are well worth picking up. If you ever see one in a charity shop, anywhere like that, pick it up, read it. You will not be disappointed. And the final book I read this month is called Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi, and this is one which was recommended by Jess McGlynn. I saw it in her wrap up from May, and she recommended it so highly that I thought, I've got to get myself that book. This book starts in Africa with Effia and Essie, and they are sisters, but they don't actually know they're sisters. One has been born to one tribe and the other has been born to another, and it follows the journeys of those sisters, but not just their sisters, the generations that follow those sisters. So each chapter is dedicated to a different member of the family and their story of how they are surviving, what they are doing throughout this kind of colonialization of Africa. Some of them end up in America, and it's incredibly interesting to see how different their lives are, considering they come from the same past, and how different all the families' lives are, and how incredibly hard it is that laws change, and somehow being a person of colour who is working and fully free to then suddenly not being free and being constrained and restrained and not able to get on the buses, same, you know, just how utterly devastating that must be, and the impact that had on people, and then slavery within the US. This book covers a whole host of really important topics, and it's a very powerful book. I know I've said that for like loads of the books, but it really is. It's a book which I would definitely recommend reading, and it's one which resonates, and I think that's because of the way they do a chapter per generation, so you see how that family is just spreading and growing and changing. Yes, enjoyed that one. And that's it, 5 books in June. I'm quite impressed with that, I'm perfectly happy. And I've already started on a couple in July, so I'll let you know what I read this month. Right, see you again soon, bye.